take two. Well, renewed welcome, and please, if you can go ahead and give us the summary.
Thank you. Well, I was honored, and I am honored to be invited to be amongst you in this beautiful country and at this beautiful university to talk about a critical issue. My talk is entitled Learning from the Earth. And I think we need to learn about the ecological laws and understand if there are contradictions between these ecological laws, which are unmovable, non-fungible, non-negotiable, and the laws that we humans have created within our economic system. And we see there's 4 glaring contradictions here between the laws of the earth and the laws of mankind. The first one is that while ecology is grounded on the promise that everything is connected to everything else, we understand this from a scientific perspective, that the earth is built on the interconnectivities. Capitalism, on the other hand, has only one connection, and that is the cash nexus. It is only cash that connects people to people and people to the earth. So this creates a very strong problem because the cash nexus just encourages people to think in terms of the profit margin and not to think about the consequences of the relationship. The cash nexus also would encourage there to be a ranking of values for humans and for non-human animals according to the cash relativity. So it is a deeply ethical and scientific problem that arises here. There's another problem, which is while ecology is circular, in the sense that there is no such thing as waste for the earth. When a tree is downed in the forest, then the nutrients of that tree become important for the recycling of nutrients within the soil. So for the earth, there's nothing called waste. The earth is bound by circular ecosystem processes. However, the capitalist economic system is based on a linearity. All that the economic system is concerned about is how something goes in and how something goes out. But where that item goes to is irrelevant to the economic system. So then we have severe problems with the waste cycle. And one can summarize the ecological problem according to economics in terms of the creation of waste. Be it hazardous waste, be it carbon dioxide, be it people regarded as disposable within our economic system. The third contradiction we have is that it's been proven through billions of years on this earth that nature knows best. Nature knows best. Nature has a different time scale and different histories to rely upon. Whereas in economic schools, we are taught that the free market system knows best. So if the free market system knows best, and if it is based on a profit mechanism and a cash nexus, then we end up with the production of food solely for the profit margin and not for its nutrient content. And we end up with disturbance of the ecosystem processes, disturbance of the health of the environment, and disturbances of mankind itself through this. The fourth, and I would argue the most critical contradiction between the ecological laws grounded in the first and second law of thermodynamics and the economic capitalist system is that there are bounded limitations within the Earth's processes. We are bound by the limitations of non-renewable resources and the limitations within the renewability of renewable resources. However, the capitalist economic model is based on an exponential constant growth. And the moment that that economic system has a, quote, recession, a decline in the exponentiality of its economic growth, then it goes into a, quote, recession of unemployment and inflation. So we have by design an economic model that is in contradiction to the scientific design of this earth. And the science is non-negotiable. The economic model is negotiable. So the question that we have as academics, as environmentalists, as thinkers, as people of the earth, is what do we want to do? Do we want to continue with this concept that capitalism cannot be changed and rather have to deal with a collapsing ecosystem around us, an increasing rate of climate change where we may reach 3.5 to 4 degrees Celsius, increase of temperature by 2100, the increasing rates of extinction, where if we do hit 4 degrees Celsius by 2100, we are talking about the extinction of 40 to 70% of all species, plants and animals, and according to James Lovelock, human populations as well. So what alternative do we find to be easier for us to swallow and for us to imagine? A different economic model, one not built on scientific fallacies? And if we want to develop a different economic model, where would we take it? Where would we take that? Or do we lack the courage and the imagination to develop a different economic model, and rather we are faced with the destruction of our ecosystems within the next 2 to 5 generations? It's a very serious question, and to put it bluntly, I truly am terrified by the predictions that the scientists and all scientists have with regards to climate change and where we are going. So what becomes our role as academics? I think here it would take a very courageous role from the university systems to recognize that at the university it is our responsibility to do two things: to teach the truth, or the truths in the plural, and to teach imagination and to welcome imagination. So how can we continue to have schools of economics that are based on scientific fallacies presented as a truth when they are completely false and they are in contradiction to the ecological laws? So my recommendation, my plea, is that our universities ground their teachings within ecological laws and not within these problematic and unscientific economic suggestions or economic human laws. My second suggestion is that we're able to teach with imagination and to teach with hope, rather than to teach with limitation and to teach with an accepted philosophical perspective of the other. All too often we have been taught to think in binaries and to think of othering. We other the earth, we regard it as acceptable. We other animals, it's okay to destroy them. And we other each other as human beings. We accept a racist discourse saying that myself, I am better than the other individual because I am a daughter of the city and he is a daughter of the countryside, a son of the countryside. So we have ways that we other each other. That othering is not only in opposition to ecological laws that don't practice this way, that believe in diversity and interdependence, but it also is in contradiction to the world that we have to create if we really want to create a world that is in opposition to this form of capitalism. So I am hopeful in the possibilities that we can create it. The question becomes, do we have the courage to actually create a new system?
Okay. I mean, this is so much against mainstream economics.
Yes, it is.
What chances do people like you have of being heard and of having an impact and making things change? I mean, aren't the laws of the market, of big business, of industries, of big gain, of employment, of exponential development too strong for people like you who have a holistic view? So, in other words, how implementable are visions like this?
There's several ways that we can look at this. We can understand this question in several different ways. Yes, most definitely, the corporations and the economic laws that we are suffering under right now are very strong. They are very strong, there's no question. However, within academia, there is a huge possibility for change, because it is within academia that we can present alternative vision, that we can encourage imagination, we can encourage hope. So I am hopeful of change arising here. And there are many others who think like me. Ecological economists, not environmental economists by the way, but ecological economists, have been pushing this new way of thinking about economics. It has reached a stage now that there are many places in Western Europe that are pushing for degrowth. There are other places that are pushing for steady state economics. So there are these economic models that are present, that are being taught in academia and are being taught in particular communities. So there is a space for that here, most definitely. I'm also hoping through my reading of human history, any change in human history has always been presented by a minority before it gets accepted by the majority. And many times we did not even need the acceptance of the majority to have a change in human history. So as a member of a minority pushing the scientific vision of economics, I have the history of revolutions behind me to support the possibility of change. And I also have the possibility within academia that claims that they are open to innovation, they are open to critical thinking, that would also welcome this possibility of change.
Only being strangled by business?
Yes.
You just said that 6 people, 4 people own as much as 50% of the rest of the population.
Yes, most
so
definitely.
Things are not heading in the right direction.
No. From an economic lens, things are most definitely not heading in the right direction. There is no question about that. Inequality is increasing. The unemployment of the youth, particularly in the Arab region, is increasing. Wars and occupation and racism are all increasing, most definitely. However, there remain little slivers of hope. And again, it's through my reading of human history. So when you look at any aspect of change, it starts by creating shards, by creating little breakdowns within this window. If we think about human history as a glass, it's very difficult for us to break that glass through one stone, But many, many small stones can get to weaken that glass. If we regard that glass as capitalism, as the hegemony of the minority against the majority, then there are a multitude of small little stones that are being thrown on the glass. The environmental justice movement is today, without exception, the largest social movement in the world. The largest social movement in the world. So we have these rumblings, we have these ripple effects that are taking place literally throughout the world, and most definitely here in North Africa as well. So there are these possibilities. And human history tells us that we are never sure when these small little possibilities will rise to create this change and tide. We can never really predict when that camel's back is going to break. We don't really know when that will happen. But it could happen. It could happen. The other alternative that we have is resignation. So either we take part in a resistance for critical thinking, or we resign ourselves to the current model. And that resignation is in all simplicity death. And I believe too much in this earth. I believe too much in people. And I have too much love of the magic of the earth to resign to this aspect of death and acceptance of capitalism.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.